So good evening and welcome to the University of San Francisco. Good evening and welcome to this joint USF and Commonwealth Club event featuring Valerie Biden Owens. Thank you for the possibility for us to live stream this to folks across the city and beyond, and podcast it later so that folks around the country and beyond will have a chance to also be present for this amazing conversation. This is a very special conversation with Valerie Biden Owens. My name is Paul Fitzgerald. I'm the president here at the University of San Francisco. Thank you. On behalf of our amazingly diverse, wonderfully brilliant students, staff, and faculty, it's my pleasure to welcome members of the Board of Trustees, members of advisory boards, faculty, friends of the university, and leaders of the city of San Francisco. We're honored to welcome Valerie Biden Owens back to the USF campus. In a minute, I'll tell you why I say back. She is the first woman in U.S. history to have run a presidential campaign, that of her older brother, Joey, Joseph R. Biden Jr. She also led his 7 straight Senate campaigns and I think ran his successful senior year high school run for student body president. She's chair of the Biden Institute at the University of Delaware and author of this amazing memoir that I hope you've all had a chance to read, Growing Up Biden. You'll hear a lot more about that during the conversation this evening. I am very pleased to welcome Dr. Gloria Duffy, President and CEO of the Commonwealth Club of California. She is a longtime friend of the university and of me, a community partner, a recipient of a 2006 Doctor of Humane Letters honoris causa from the University of San Francisco. As we begin, I want to be sure that you know that this evening's event is the result of a collaborative and ongoing work between people and organizations who share a passionate commitment to public service, to mentoring young people, and to awaken in them the vocation of public service. And for the public servants who are here present, thank you for being examples of what it is to stand up and lead our great city. So this event is being held in partnership, as I say, with the Commonwealth Club of California, the oldest and largest public affairs forum in the United States. Another principal partner is the Biden Institute at the University of Delaware. The Biden Institute works to educate and empower the next generation of leaders by convening students, scholars, activists, policymakers, government officials, and business and nonprofit leaders from a diverse range of disciplines, political ideologies, and backgrounds to advance public policy conversations on issues of critical importance facing our nation, our region, and our world. Thank you, Valerie Biden Owens, for launching this great conversation and partnership between the University of San Francisco and the Biden Institute, the McCarthy Center for Public Service and the Common Good here at USF, and the Biden Institute have partnered now for 2 summers, the first one virtually, the second one in person, to bring together social equity interns, social equity scholars from both universities, not only to do direct work with young people to prevent summer reading loss, but also to begin to do the critical analysis of the social structures that either help young people to succeed or hold young people back based on factors well beyond their control, but not beyond ours. So, and then another critical partner in this conversation is the YMCA here in San Francisco. This summer, in partnership with the Biden Institute and the McCarthy Center, students from USF and the University of Delaware were placed in YMCA's Power Scholars Academy, where over the course of 7 weeks during the summer, they gained a deeper understanding of how public programs and policies can positively impact the needs of a community's students, young people, and their families. Now, I am delighted to introduce my dear friend, Dr. Chuck Collins, 2018 recipient of a USF Honorary Doctorate and President Emeritus of the YMCA here in San Francisco, and a special advisor to the Secretary General of the World Alliance of YMCAs. Chuck will introduce our speakers. Chuck worked behind the scenes, as I said, with Valerie Biden Owens and Derek Brown, Senior Director of the Leo T. McCarthy Center here at USF, to design, launch, and guide our Equity Scholars Partnership with the Biden Institute. Dr. Collins.
Well, good afternoon. This is a sellout crowd, and I am really pleased that everyone showed up this afternoon. It's such a great honor to see you here, but let me start first by acknowledging that we're on the unceded ancestral homeland of the Ramaytush Ohlone, who are the original inhabitants of the San Francisco Peninsula. As indigenous stewards of this land, and in accordance with their traditions, the Ramaytush Ohlone have never ceded, nor lost, nor forgotten their responsibilities as the caretakers of this place, as well as for all of the peoples who reside in their traditional territory. As guests, we recognize that we benefit from living and working on their traditional homeland. We wish to pay our respects by acknowledging the ancestors, elders, and relatives of the Ramaytush Ohlone community by affirming their sovereign rights as First People. May we be committed to supporting the contemporary and traditional evolution of the American Indian community. As Father Paul welcomed us, we have a special opportunity to hear Valerie Biden Owens and Gloria Duffy in conversation. Valerie's memoir is about family, faith, and our duties to each other. And through this lens, we can understand the values, the histories, and the events that shaped those who grew up Biden. I told Sebastian Ginelli the other day that I hope never, ever to feel the wrath of Valerie. But more to the point of this book, I hope even more that the forces that shaped her life will reflect on a path forward for America and the world. I met Val 4 years ago at Sissy Swig's home for a small gathering of then former Vice President Joe Biden. Soon thereafter, Valerie was back in town, and together with Kathy McLaughlin, we had lunch at One Market to discuss the nascent Biden Institute. One of the outcomes of that meeting was our determination to do something about the looming equity gap facing so many children and so many young people in America. And as Father Paul was saying, from this, the Equity Interns program was hatched, and now going into its third year in partnership with the Biden Institute, the University of Delaware, the Leo T. McCarthy Center here at USF, and the YMCA of San Francisco's Power Scholars, we're reaching to date thousands of students. But not only that, as Father Paul was saying, it's influencing the interns, those young people that are going into the program to understand this gap and what lies in there, and what better place to really begin that path towards either vocation or avocation, and to develop that mindset also within the families of the scholars, their families, and their communities. And so what I would like, this is a moment that I would just like for everyone who has been involved in this program. Would you just stand for a second so that we can acknowledge you? Please. And so what you're seeing, is the outline, the footprints of a dream. And so thank you for that. As a member of the Board of Governors of the Commonwealth Club, bringing Gloria Duffy into this conversation joins two fearless leaders to discuss family, faith, and our shared responsibilities. Gloria's background across many sectors draws from a deep reservoir of experience. The recent death of Mikhail Gorbachev highlights the work she did in leading the world in nuclear disarmament and dismantling weapons of mass destruction in the former Soviet Union. Her skills of negotiation have made this world safer. With equal diplomacy, she now leads the Commonwealth Club, which, as Father Paul was saying, since 1903 has been America's oldest forum promoting civil discussion. And so it's my pleasure to bring into this conversation here in Xavier Auditorium at USF, and to the broad national and global audience, Valerie Biden Owens and Dr. Gloria Duffy.
Thank you. Wow. Hi. Hi. Did anybody tell you that I'm a New York Times bestseller? Just thought I'd say it.
Here, here.
And anybody here that has a cell phone, they can just call my brother and tell him I'm up here.
Well, hi, everyone. Thank you, Father Paul, for that gracious welcome. Thank you, Chuck, for that warm introduction. It's good friends and partnerships like tonight's that are most fulfilling for the Commonwealth Club, and we're so glad to be included here with our friends from USF. I'm Gloria Duffy, as Chuck mentioned, President and CEO of the Commonwealth Club, and I'm so pleased to be the moderator of tonight's conversation with Valerie Biden Owens. Warm welcome to club members, USF students, friends of USF, and the others that are with us here this evening. Ms. Biden Owens is definitely a woman who needs no introduction, but I just wanted to mention a few important points. She is the first woman in history to have run a presidential campaign, that of her brother, Joseph R. Biden Jr. She also managed the campaigns leading to his 7 straight U.S. Senate victories and has been his principal surrogate and on the campaign trail. She is chair of the Biden Institute at the University of Delaware and a partner at Owens Patrick Leadership Seminars. She sits on the advisory board of the Beau Biden Foundation for the Protection of Children. For 20 years, when she was not managing or advising President Biden's campaigns, she served as executive vice president of Joe Slade White and Company, a media consulting firm. She's worked extensively with Women's Campaign International, teaching women how to organize and develop communication and political skills. She has also served on the national board of the Women's Leadership Forum, of the Democratic National Committee, and for 35 years on the board of the Ministry of Caring. She is a former high school social studies teacher many, many years ago, a graduate of the University of Delaware, and she was a resident fellow at the Harvard Institute of Politics. Most importantly for us tonight, she is the author of the new book, Growing Up Biden, a story of family, faith, and responsibility, the subjects that we will discuss with her this evening. You've already given her a warm welcome, but please, once again, welcome Valerie Biden Owens.
Thanks, Father. Thanks, Chuck. Maureen, thank you. Sissy, thank you.
So I have quite a few questions for you, but I just
Make
want
them easy.
I imagine you're up to any level of difficulty. And I'll start by asking some of those, but I do want to remind those of you here in the room, please do send us questions. There are question cards. You can send them up to the front for us to ask. For those who are watching online, use the chat function on your online portal. Again, we'll be collecting questions, and I'll get to as many of them as I can as we get to the latter half of our program. So, now, let's get started.
Okay.
Tell us, why did you write this wonderful memoir, Growing Up Biden?
Well, I never started out to write a book. What I write and have written for years are vignettes. I'm a storyteller. And the way that, when people have different emotions, happy or sad, churn in, some people go out and run 5 miles or play the piano or do a great artwork. I write. So I just go up and sit down, and whatever the emotion is from that I feel for myself or that I feel for my associate, whoever I'm with, I write. And my children, I have 3 children, Missy, Cuff, and Casey, boy, girl, boy. Is that right? Girl, boy. I know my kids. I got it. It's a girl, boy, girl. And they said, Mommy, why don't you put these stories in a book? And you've heard this expression before, my Biden word of honor. I said, who cares? That I rode on the bicycle with Joe, Uncle Joe. I mean, who cares? And they said, we care. Write it down for us and write it down for your grandchildren. So I did. And the hard part was not the writing, because that just came, but it was putting it together, like which kid do you like better, or what story to put in. And I find that to the extent that I'm good at one thing, I'm a better writer than an editor. So I wrote it for myself, no grand scheme. I wrote it for myself and my kids.
And from this book, what do you hope readers will take away?
At the risk of being a wise guy, I don't care. There's no moral to my story of what I want you. I'm writing this book so that you'll understand this. For me as an author, the biggest compliment for me would be when you put the book down and you said, God, she gets me. That's my mom. Or, that's my dad. Because I grew up I have 3 brothers. And we grew up in a middle-class American family, mid-20th century, Irish Catholic background. And my family, I bet is very much like yours, many of yours here in the audience and people who are listening. I mean, sure, my brother's president, that makes it a little bit different. But, the fabric, the threads that weave the concept of family together, which are compassion and commitment and love and heartbreak and disappointment and loss, they're the same threads that I bet run through all of your families. It's just a little bit different that ours are exposed because my brother's a public figure. So I think that if there's any moral to the story, which I didn't set out to write a moral to a story, but it's that there's a lot more that we have in common than we don't. And the theme, I guess it's empathy, which is sorely being, there's a vacuum, I think, at this point in our country of empathy. And empathy is just a fancy word of saying feeling, not as in, obviously, to touch the fabric, but in absorbing. And to be able to say, gee, God, I know what that feels like. And when you do that, it's so much easier to try and come together. But again, I don't want to make myself there's no holier than thou or moralistic story. It's a story about family, faith, and commitment. It's a story about mom and dad.
I was...
Did I answer that?
Yeah, I think so. We'll get back to some of that as well. I was struck by how close your family was through a lot of ups and downs, financial ups and downs and so on, and how the extended family really pulled together. So a main theme was how close the Biden family is and was, how the values of family, faith, responsibility instilled in you and your brothers as children carried through to your work in adulthood. So how did that somewhat unique family background with all of that love and cooperation move forward into your work and your siblings' work in adulthood?
I think it was part of our DNA. It was mom and dad. Mom and dad told me and my 3 brothers that we were a gift to one another, and we believed them. And we had one job, and this was mom. Dad was a man of few words, but when he spoke, we all listened. But mom was the one, who was always yakking at us for something. But what mom said to us is that there is nothing closer than brothers and sisters, even fathers and mothers and fathers and children. Brothers and sisters are the same, they're the closest that you come. And what you kids have to do is you have to take care of one another. You have to have each other's back. And really and truly, she said, when you walk out that door, you close the door behind you, you just have to remember that you're Bidens. And not Bidens like your Kennedys or your Rockefellers or Whitneys or whatever famous name, but you're Bidens, and you're 4 little kids who have each other's back. And God forbid if one of us would ever turn on the other. I mean, that's when all hell would have broken loose in our house. So we knew, I mean, and little kids, on our little shoulders, we knew the responsibility was not to disappoint our mother and father. And so that carried through. Joe's much more, the natural extension was his going into public service. And that doesn't make him good or bad, that just makes who he is. I mean, he is a public servant. There's no daylight between the private man and the public servant. I mean, I have tried to show, my friend today has my big handbag with her, and when I campaigned with Joe, I used to put masking tape in it, but I never got to him close soon enough to put the masking tape over his mouth. Like, no, Joe, don't say it, because he is, you see what you get. But I'm now being a Biden and continuing talking when you have other things to say, so I will move on. Did I, again, corral me?
I will,
okay?
I will. So a couple of childhood memories, favorite childhood memories of growing up Biden. What would those be?
Well, there are 2. Well, there are a lot. I think that the one that speaks to perhaps to this audience is the relationship with me and my brother Joe. And then I have 3 other brothers, and I like to do a similar story. But with Joe, who is my big brother, and it used to be 20 years ago that he was 6 years older. Now, since the son of a gun exposed me in his books, it's only 3 years difference between the 2 of us. But, okay, so we live in Scranton. My brother Joe was born in Scranton. I was born in Boston. My parents had moved back. Long story short, I'm 5 years old, and we're at my grandparents' house on North Washington Avenue. My best girlfriend lived across the street. Her name was Mary McGee. And in the old days, when you went to first grade, again, I was 5. You didn't go to pre-KK, pre-first. You went right into first grade, into the jaws of the nuns. Whoa, that was mighty powerful. And so I went to the Catholic girls' school. My friend Mary McGee went to the public school. She had a birthday party. She was turning 6. So I, got all dressed up, and Mom watches me across the street. I go to Mary McGee's house. And there was a whole room of 12, 15 little girls that I didn't know. And we women have not always been, starts when we were little kids, we've not always been our sister's keeper, I was the odd man out, so to speak, and, they didn't care. They all knew each other, and I didn't know anybody. So I said to Mrs. McGee, I want to go home. And she said, oh, no, Valerie, stay. And I said, no, I want my brother. I want to go home. So Mrs. McGee calls my mother. My mother runs up to the sandlot, not organized baseball, but where we used to play the field. She gets Joey, brings him home, cleans behind his ears, puts on a sport coat, and he walks over and knocks on the door and says, Mrs. McGee, I'm Joey Biden. She said, I know who you are. Come on in. And he stayed with me for the whole birthday party. He played Pin the Tail on the Donkey, musical chairs, whatever it was. And he was just quiet there. And when we walked out, he said, thank you, Mrs. McGee. And we walked out the door, and I said, oh, Joey, thank you for coming. And he said, no, thanks for inviting me, Val. I had a great time. He was kind. He never took my face. He never took my pride. He said, no, thank you. It was really nice of you. The other side, we couldn't fight outside the family, outside the door, but we're normal kids. So we had, sibling rivalries. And so we had orchestrated family fights that we took place in the house, which were water balloons, midnight attacks. my brother Jimmy, he was the middle one, Jimmy and I are way smarter than Joe and Frank, you know. I mean, or at least we were a lot more clever. You know, Joe would never said, "Mom, can you believe what she did to me?" So one night funny, Joe did something that was, to me, I thought was a grave offense, and it was enough. So I called Jimmy Biden and I said, "This is war. Well, I don't even remember what it was, but we're going to take him down." And Jimmy said, "Yeah." So we get on our bikes, we ride up to the local mart, which was strip mall, and there's a pet shop in there. And in the pet shop, there is a big glass cage, and they have snakes in there. And we went over, and I said, and Jimmy always had money because he had a paper route or something. And I said, "Jimmy, that's the one." And it surely was like this, and it surely had to be slimy. And we get the snake, put it in the box with air holes in it, because we were humane. We wanted the snake to breathe, at least till we get home. And we went to bed, 3 bedrooms. Boys are in a double bunk beds, and they're in the middle room, Mom and Dad. And since I'm the only girl, I have my own room. I'm the princess, as well it should have been. And we wait till the lights go out. Jimmy Biden takes the snake, opens the lid, and puts it at the bottom of Joe's bed. Joe gets into bed, and it's like, like the Partridge Family, "Night, Mom, night, Dad," And then all of a sudden, the scream. The snake found its nice way up Joe's leg. And Jimmy Biden fell out of the top bunk laughing. Frankie Biden, who was in there, started to cry. And I said, "Game, set, match. We won." So they're the kind of stories. We were normal and, had those kinds of fights. But they're 2 memories of humor and joy and sharing and being there. There's an expression, if you have to ask, it's too late. Mm-hmm. So that's how we tried. Mm-hmm. Again, we're normal families. We're not, and when I talk about my brother, he doesn't walk on water. He's good enough that I don't have to try and convince you that he's great. And it's the same with our family. There's a lot of good and bad. But the question is, when you get knocked down, you just got to get back up.
So your brother calls you his best friend. How did you, out of this family environment, several kids and so on, how did you and he get to be best friends?
Well, he was my big brother, and from the time I remember opening my eyes, and again, this is not a Bidenism, there's no exaggeration, there's no malarkey. He grabbed my hand and he said, "Come on, Val." He said, "Let's go. We got things to do, places to go, and people to see." And he took me with him every place. And when his friend said, "Why did you bring a girl?" He said, "She's not a girl, she's my sister," And he told me, again, gospel truth, that whatever he could do, he said, "You can do it better." He said, "You're smarter than I am. You're a nicer person than I am. You're whatever it was." And he gave me confidence I thought that I owed it to him and then to myself to try and be the little girl or the big girl that he thought I was or was capable of being. So my little legs pumped just as hard to keep up with them and the boys. But he said, "You could do it," and he said I could do it, and I believed. I said, "Well, okay." Like 29, he's running for the Senate, the youngest guy. He was too young when we were elected in 1972 to serve. He had to wait for his birthday. And he's the first senator that he and I ever met. And he's 29 and I'm 20, what's that make me, 26? And I said, "I don't know how to be a campaign manager." And then I thought about it. I said, "Hell, you don't know how to be a senator. So if you could be one at 29, I sure could be a campaign manager at 26. So that's, it's about trust. And I mean, we were together all the time and with not just Joe, but with my 3 brothers. I don't think there's anything that any one of us has done to deliberately hurt the other. Now, have we? Because we've made a mistake or we've been dumb or we've hurt somebody's feelings. We used to have family. Do you want me to stop? Do you have an?
No, please.
This is Joe's idea, we had what was called family meetings. And whenever anything happened, when one of the four siblings, we were upset or mad, we weren't upset at 7, we were mad, or 10 years old. And one of us could call a family meeting, and our parents never interfered. We'd go into the bunk room, shut the door, and say, okay, what's the problem? And I said, Joe, I mean, I am so mad at you. You know, do you know in front of Tom, do you know what you said? And one of us would say, oh my gosh, I did? I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. Or, oh, what an idiot I am. And we would get the hurt out, and we were generally sorry, because, I mean, we loved each other. Why would you do that? Except you were dumb and you were a kid and you made a mistake. And it was over. And we would then go on, and I forgot what the question was, but I know it was profound, as a profound answer, no doubt. Would I answer whatever question
Absolutely.
it was?
So the campaign management business is pretty rough and tumble. And you were the first woman to run a presidential campaign and so on. I understood from your book that Joe's advocacy extended to helping you in that role. At one point you said he pulled up a chair for you at meetings where other people didn't think a woman should be at the table. So can you talk a little bit about how you dealt with the attitudes, how Joe supported you?
Yeah. Well, I had it a lot easier than most women, because, I mean, I was told I'm the first, but, you know, my big brother sat at the head of the table. So, you know, he literally pulled up a chair, where a lot of women, you know, they have to crawl up that ladder to get there. And again, at that time, when I said rather flippantly that, you know, we women are not our sister's keeper. And especially in the years 70s and 80s, if you got in that high place, you kept it. You pulled the ladder up, said, it's mine. Now you work it and you figure out how to get it. But Joe pulled up the chair and said, this is my sister. She speaks for me. If she says it, just assume I said it, and go, you know, go. And go for it. And so that was fine until he walked out of the room. And most people, they were all men. There were no, again, somebody could find some woman someplace, but for the purposes of our discussion, there were no other women campaign managers. There were a few women journalists. There were no women media consultants. There were no women, you know, women answered the phone and opened up and shut headquarters. So I had to, when he left, I had to prove myself. But I was raised with men, and I trusted men, and I dealt with them as equal because I didn't know any better. I mean, I was equal to my brothers, so there was not, and every once in a while there was a non-believer, and I had to pull my own weight and pull some muscle, but...
Other than Joe's pulling you up a chair at the table, personally, what made you successful as a campaign manager?
I knew because I had a PhD in Joe Biden. It wasn't that I had a PhD in political science or how to manage a campaign. I knew campaigns were about the voter, not about the candidate. The candidate was simply a vehicle. There's 3 or 4 different types of bicycles you could ride to get where you want. Joe was one type of the bicycle. And the important thing was to present Joe authentically, for him to listen to what you had to say, for him to tell you what his views were, and say, that's a good idea, or no, I don't see that, let's figure out how to do something. And I spoke his language. See, what made me a good campaign manager, again, was not my brilliance, and I'm not dumbing myself down, I'm a smart woman, but it was my understanding that 99% of the time that Joe and I came to the same conclusion. So it was with complete trust. So Joe could go out and do what only he could do, be the best candidate and meet the people, and he never had to worry about what happened back at the ranch. There was no piece of literature, there was no ad, there was no anything, volunteer work that went out that I didn't actually sign off on. And if I signed off on it, he didn't have to worry about it, and he could do. So that's what made me a good campaign manager. I could take all that stuff off of Joe, that he didn't ever have to be in headquarters, and he knew it would be, whether it's the right way or the wrong way, it would be our way. It would be the Biden way, and it would be a truthful way. Again, not a pious truth, but truthful to the Biden style. And you liked it or you didn't like that.
So let's go back to the Biden way, since you brought it up again. Faith, family, responsibility. We've talked a bit about family. How about the faith part? What roots in faith does the Biden way have?
Well, our culture is an Irish Catholic. I think being a Catholic, for me, being a Catholic is as much a culture as it is a religion. You know, we were an Irish Catholic family. We were not a pious family or a religious family. We went to Catholic school. We went to Mass on Sunday. We didn't eat meat on Friday. We gave up candy for Lent. You know, but what was instilled in us, what made the faith so mesh so well, is that the Catholic social doctrine that we were taught at school with the nuns meshed with my family's values. My father, the man of little words, said that the greatest sin of all was the abuse of power. And we know, especially women, the first thing they think about is, I don't know, one of the abuse of power is, physical. But we all know there's abuse of power is psychological, it's emotional, it's financial, it's more than just physical. And my dad said it takes a small man to hit a woman or a child. And he hated bullies. And specifically, my brother Joe, the great orator, I don't know if, when he was a little kid, he could not string more than 3 words together. He was a terrible stutterer. And people, adults, as well as children, made fun of him. And the assumption was when you can't, that you're stupid. You can't study, you're stupid. And my mom said to him, no, Joey, you're not stupid. It's that your brain works so fast you can't get the words out fast enough. No, you're a really smart little boy. So my brother knows, which what I think makes him such a good leader. My brother knows what it feels like to be humiliated, to be made fun of, to be the other. But you know what? I bet every one of you do. But you remember that girl in high school or that guy. And when you think about it, at least for me, the bile is still, I can feel the bile in the back of my throat. I remember her, And you have a choice. You can become a bully yourself, or you can realize that we're all in this together and do the right thing. So Joe chose not to be a bully. My dad said that's the greatest sin of all. And what we did in our faith, in our Catholic religion, it wasn't something that we just went, as I said, that we went to Mass on Sunday, but it was part of the same social doctrine, and that, there but for the grace of God go I. We are our brother's keeper. And again, not, giving up my, we are our brother's keeper. I still want a pretty car and a nice house. It's not grander than just being kind and empathetic to the best that sometimes you're better at it than others, but we are our brother's keeper.
Just to finish off the trifecta, responsibility, the third part of the Biden way. How is that different from faith and family and the values you've just described? What's responsibility?
And with faith, the Catholic Church is forgiven. There are sins of omission which are as great as sins of commission. So responsibility is if you see something that it's like the same. What is it? If you see something, say something. But if you see abuse, and if you see injustice, if you see inequality, it's not enough to say, oh. and turn your head. You have to step up to the plate. At least my parents told us, not you. You do what you know, again, I'm not preaching, but we were told if you saw it, you were supposed to do something about it, not just turn your head. And again, that's the Catholic sin of omission, which is the gravest commission. Did that answer that question?
Absolutely.
I want to get an A. You say it's a Catholic schoolgirl. I mean, did I answer the question, sister?
And you are clearly a former social studies teacher. Yeah. From which you transitioned to campaign manager at age 26. What was that like, and what convinced you to do that?
Joe. And I said, I don't know how to be a campaign manager. He said, sure you do. He said, campaigns are just, had run for county council. And he said, it's the same as running for county council, or the bigger circles, the people who work for you. And had I known, here's one of my favorite sayings that I think I made up myself, but I don't know. Sometimes, it's a good thing that you don't know what you don't know, because I didn't know what the world of 1972 women in politics in the big leagues meant. I didn't know that all the pundits were men, and that those pundits thought that no woman should be in that circle or should be in that game. And my brother said I could do it, so I did it. But had I known the hostile environment, I probably would have been afraid to do it. And so you have to, now looking back, I could say, well, I took a great risk and I reached. I didn't. My brother said, come on, let's go, and I did it. But there's a lot, the more information you have and the more successful you have, the greater the risk is for you. So I was fortunate enough to be not that smart, not that high up, and not realize there was a greater risk, and just did it. And I knew I was doing, it was not just me, it was my brother Jimmy Biden was the finance chair at 23. My brother Frankie Biden was the volunteer coordinator. Everybody thought my dad was the candidate. He was 63 and he looked the part. and mom was the coffee chair. I mean, I'm not kidding when I said we had no power, we had no influence, we had no money, and there was no structured Democratic Party in the state of Delaware at the time. But what we had was vision and energy and the best candidate. And in 1972, there was really a combustible energy between youth and the issues. And the reason that we ran in 1972 was to end the war in Vietnam, for civil rights, and to save planet Earth. We were one of the first campaigns in the country to ever talk about the environment. And that's why we ran. And what is it, Cicero or Plato, one of them said, if you don't get in the game, I'm paraphrasing, because, we're like that, Cicero and Plato and I. If you don't get in the game and if you don't stand up, then you're going to be, your world will be governed by people less than you. So you have to take a chance, you have to risk. And again, it was easier at 26 to risk than it probably was at 56 for me to risk. But I did it.
I want to come back to that 72 campaign, but I do see a gentleman flashing question cards here, and I want to remind everybody, please send us your questions. We'd love to have some questions from you.
And I'll hang around afterwards, too, with books if you have any questions.
So you have said that 72 campaign was your favorite campaign. It was called the Children's Crusade.
That's what the press called us, yeah.
So was that just because the candidate was young? Were there young people involved in that campaign?
It was because I was a high school teacher at Wilmington Friends, which was a private, wealthy, Republican enclave Quaker school. All the teachers were probably Democrats or leaning towards Democrats, but the entire student body, parents. And these parents would have sooner voted for Mickey Mouse than for a Democrat. So it was, they're the kids I taught. So I would be fired for this now, but I jokingly said to my kids, my class, if you don't work for my brother, I'll flunk you. And they thought, isn't Miss Biden funny? Isn't that cute? But I said that Joe came in to speak to the student body, which was all of 250 kids or some number. It's in the book. I don't remember exactly now. And they were intrigued because in 1972, they had skin in the game. It's the first year that 18-year-olds could vote. And they all had brothers and sisters who were at college campuses, you know, from the Kent States and on that were revolting and having campus riots. And everybody was going to Vietnam. That was there. So I said, look, you can learn about, in all seriousness, I said, you can learn about social studies in the classroom here, or you can experience it and, come with me. And my students, made the logo. They made all the we didn't have any money. So they would come after practice, and all of our signs were handmade posters with, that somebody would be stapling the wooden stick on it. And those signs that we watched in a parade, as opposed to the fancy posters, were they were different. I mean, people said, there's something to this. And Nelia was an 8th grade teacher, Joe's late wife. And it was those kids, those 8th graders, got their parents because of Mrs. Biden. And they got their parents to drive them and to distribute literature. And the press called us the Children's Crusade, and we had our own Biden post office. We had no money for stamps, and we had no money for fancy pamphlets. So those rag newspapers like the Screamers, the Daily News, well, the weekend, I'll finish this, the weekend before Labor Day, and that's in the old days, 72, that's when the campaign really went into gear, only those 6 weeks, Labor Day to Election Day. So the weekend before Labor Day, we had $7,000 left, and the good government groups, which liked Joe, said he's a good young man and never going to win. But we ran against, this is Nixon landslide year, against George McGovern. Our opponent had twice governor, 3 times House, and was running for his 3rd time as United States Senator. The president, Nixon, came in and anointed him in August, and to run our opponent. And our opponent made the big mistake of, they thought we were a gnat. They never even acknowledged us. It was the Rose Garden strategy. Don't acknowledge a contender to the throne because they're nobodies. So we snuck up on them. Anyway, the Labor Day weekend, we ran a poll. We had a 16% recognition factor in the state and a 17% approval rating, because that one point was we were a Democrat. They didn't know who we were. We won 6 weeks later, 3,163 votes. And it was because every weekend, the next 6 weeks, those high school kids, and remember Frankie now is doing volunteer, getting kids to the youngest brother. Those high school kids and Nelia's 8th grade kids' parents, they got up at 6 o'clock in the morning, and we hand-delivered 150,000 pieces of literature throughout the state every Saturday to Election Day. And at the end, people were waiting outside their door, like, where's my paper? Or calling headquarters, I didn't get my paper. The kids would deliver the paper, play their football game at 10 o'clock, and then go back and deliver the rest. And these Republican parents, this is my theory, which is what I absolutely, of course, labor helped us and good government, but these parents who said, oh my God, Susie would no more get out of bed before 12 o'clock on a Saturday than fly, which is normal for high school kids. To see their kid, Susie or Johnny, get up at 5:30 to be at the drop-off place at 6 o'clock to hand-deliver these papers, they said, you know what? I better take another look at this guy. Because we parents think we influence our children, and we do. But our children influence us. And if your child does that, say, there's got to be something to him. I'm going to take another look. And I think it's those parents, the reason that we won, also with the help of God and the goodwill of the neighbors and all those novenas to St. Jude. But maybe.
So 50 years later, you're the chair of the Biden Institute. You're
Oh,
working,
I think your math is probably wrong.
you are working with young people again.
Yeah.
What are you doing with them, and how are you helping them to be engaged?
The cliche of helping young leaders, but what we want to do at the Biden School, the Biden Institute and the Biden School of Public Policy is have a place to convene, to bring the divergent groups, the best minds in policy and in public advocacy. The Biden Institute is different from the halls of the building, academia, where you learn the policy. Ours is the practice of politics. And you can't get any place unless you have civility and civil discourse. And so we're trying, that's our goal, and to bring people that, gosh, that never would be exposed. Look, my father said, Joe and I, all of us went to public Catholic school, but then the University of Delaware. And to have the students at the University of Delaware, ordinary kids, middle-class kids like me and Joe. By the way, I couldn't, when I enrolled, I went to Ursuline Academy for Young Girls in high school, and I wanted to, my classmates all were going, the majority of them going what we call the Catholic Ivies. For the boys, they went to the Holy Cross, the Georgetown, the Notre Dames. For the girls, it was Manhattanville, Marymount College, Newtonville. I was going to the University of Delaware because my parents couldn't afford it. And besides that, I couldn't wait to get out of an all-girls school. I thought, 5,000 co-ed, I am there, I'm there. But the biggest thing about college was living, the campus experience. And my dad, good man, but was not, and financially was not able to afford for me to go to, Joey was already there, but for me for room and board. And he said, honey, and he was a car salesman. So he tried to bribe me, and I don't mean, and it was Dad's, he was trying to do the right thing. He could buy a car because he sold them, so he could get a car that I could drive back and forth more than he could afford for the tuition. And Joe and I worked in the summer, so it wasn't like, we were waiting to get, I'm getting my nails done and where's my tuition money? So Dad said, I can't go. And another story is that my brother, several weeks later, said, come on, Val, let's have a family meeting with Mom and Dad this time. And he said, Dad, I'm not going to go back to school this year. I'm going to take this year off. He was a junior. And again, to say with dignity, because he didn't want to take my father's dignity that he couldn't do this, to send us both. And he said, I'm not going to go. Send Val. She's a better student and she deserves it, and let her go. And my father said, Ymca, we can't do that. Somehow by the end of September, at the end of August, I don't know how, my father got a loan and Joe was able to go back and I was able to go. But my first roommate, when, you exchange letters and, I'm going to be your roommate, my roommate was a sophomore because all freshmen had been assigned. And she wrote back to me, where she was from. I wrote back to her, I said, I went to Ursuline Academy and I'm now coming. She wrote back and she said, I'm sorry, I can't room with you. My parents won't let me room with the Catholic. That's 1972. So Delaware was really progressive, But I don't know how I got onto that because I think it was a different question you asked me. You see, Joe trained me, You can tell I'm his sister, Ask me this and I'm over there,
So I have some great questions from our audience here. And I'm going to combine a couple of them which have to do with advice to women. For women who still struggle to find their voice and power in a room full of men, what advice do you have? What advice do you have for women, young ladies, to move into positions of power, moving up the ladder, especially women of color?
Okay, easy thing to say, but confidence is the number one prerequisite for success in life, period, I believe. And I think you have to, it's what is this Patrick Owens leadership seminar. It's how you have to present yourself. And what I do in teaching is for women, how do you act? Most women, when you go in and I'm walking up and I'm introducing, you're a woman, so got it. And I say, hello, how are you? Well, no, I can't be, I must be respectful to you. Hi, I'm Valerie Biden, how are you?
Very well, thank you.
Get off your ass.
Yes, ma'am.
You know why? Now we're equal.
Yes, eye to eye.
You're sitting there, you sit back down. When I say I'm interested, and it's like, pat, 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 how are you? But if you stand up, we're already on equal, and you shake. You know, it's not this fish hand. You know, you shake hands, and so you got to fake it. You know, you have to pretend that you, and I didn't mean to say, cut off your ass, it just came out. But I do it in a more refined, and God, we're being recorded. So I do it in a more refined way. But there are certain things that you practice, and you got to learn techniques and confidence. Everybody thinks you're not born, it's not in your DNA. Sometimes, you think you have it, and then, it's happened to me. How many times when you're confident people, but you stand up and you got it, and you can just then all of a sudden, like, oh my God, you can feel it drain right out of you. Like, how many of you have been there? Like, I've lost, and so you get techniques that, so I just call my brother. It's my technique. What do I do?
Pretty good brother to call. What's the most challenging thing you've experienced on the campaign trail?
On a campaign trail? Not biting my tongue so severely that I have to have it resewn. Mm-hmm. People say, because my brother's in public office, you can't imagine the things the good and the bad, and they can. So what I've gotten myself into some trouble. Actually, there's several stories about that too, but a couple of them are in the book. But if Joe and I are here, Joe's at that end of the room, and I'm here, we're campaigning, and some big, brave man and his wife come up and say to me, and lay into me about Joe, what bad stuff, whatever that they don't like about him. So I looked at the woman, and I said, you must be so proud of him, your husband. She said, and I said, he's so strong that my brother's standing over there, but he comes to his sister. And he says that. So why don't you just go tell my brother? He's right there. But you must be so proud of his courage that he comes in, he kicks this one. So I'm not always real good.
You shared some poignant sayings that your mom and dad instilled in you. Are there ones you have that you have encouraged your children to live by?
Yeah, that there's... they're really moms that have stuck with me, which is every life is an incredible act of bravery. Actually, that wasn't moms. That was, I watched every life's an incredible act of bravery. And again, without being, it's not religious or it's spirit, there's that of God in every man. That's the Quaker. And you have to, if I understood and appreciated that every life was an incredible act of bravery, I would have so much more empathy. I don't know what it is, and you are acting like such a jerk, but I don't know whether you just found out that someone in your family overdosed, somebody has cancer, your husband you're going to divorce. I don't know that. I know you're acting like a jerk. So it doesn't mean I'm not that good to step back and, turn the other cheek like Christ. But for the moment, one of the things that we were taught, is that in the Biden family, is that words are weapons. And never say anything that you can't take back. That doesn't mean you don't have a backbone of steel, and that doesn't mean that you don't stand up and say, oh, no, never again. Don't do that. But it means that what we did, our parents did, we would walk away at that moment and come back in an hour or the next day and address it, not to put it under, but words are weapons. And that's what I tell my children, Jack and I. Jack said, Valerie, I'm part of this. They are our children. You know, there are two of us, but that's one of them.
Back to politics and young people. What advice do you have for young people who want to enter politics today?
I guess three things. First of all, know why you're running. It sounds simplistic, but know what it is worth losing over. That goes with why are you running and what is it worth losing over. And the other one is the three. The other one would be to get your personal life in order. Now, I don't mean CIA, you know, going through your garbage looking for your tax records. I mean your personal life. Being in politics is a rough and tumble business. And you're out and you've got incoming all day long out in the field. So when you come home, your partner, your spouse, your aged parents, your young children, that's got to be a safe haven. So you can't, if your spouse is not, that's the easiest example. From my case, if my husband weren't there with me and backing me, and I get in at 10 o'clock because I've been wherever I've been at with rallies and doing, he says, oh, glad to see you can make it, Val. 10 o'clock, I mean, it's okay. I mean, I gave the kids dinner and I gave them all the bath and I gave their homework, but I hope you had a nice day. I mean, you don't need that. So that's, you got to have your personal life in order. Or if you've got older parents or parents, now whether they're old or not, that, you know, they're used to talking to you every day. And now you're only calling them like again Thursday. That's okay, I'm your mother. I mean, I haven't heard from you in 3 days, but, you know, I'm only your mother. Mm-hmm. You know, those kinds of things. So, and then the third thing is listen to your gut. That doesn't mean that you don't surround yourself with people who are smarter than you are in the areas that you're not so smart. And you get as much information as you can. But in the end, it's your campaign, it's you, it's who you are. And so listen to your gut. So they're my three profound words of wisdom.
Looking back over this long stretch of engagement and leadership in politics and national life, of all your achievements, of what are you the most proud?
My three children. They have raised us well. They've been so good to me and Jack. And so I'm proud of that. And I'm proud of the family at large. And I'm proud that, proud is a bad word. I'm grateful that I have my three brothers. My brother, Jimmy Biden, is his best friend is Joe and Frankie. And, you know, my brothers have been a gift. And they say the same. And again, with that, there's heartbreak. You know, there's tragedy in every family. And people say, God, your family's gone through so many ups and downs, so much tragedy. But you know what? So have you. I don't know what it is, but I know that you have too. So it's like, Dad, you know, get back up and keep moving forward. The Pope, I guess we're going to end, but the Pope came to Washington, our current Pope, Francis, the Jesuit Pope, Francis. And he came to Washington in I guess it was August or September. And Joe's eldest, our collective child, had died in May 30th. And the Pope, we had a mass, and there were so many seats outside because everybody couldn't fit in the cathedral. And there's big jumbo screens. And the Pope, his sermon was being projected onto the screen. And the essence of his sermon was, keep moving forward. And I remember I was here, my daughter Casey was next to me, and my brother Joe was next to her. And I promise you, my Biden word of honor, I was positive that the Pope was speaking directly to us. Keep moving forward. That's the joy. That's the magic. What I am most grateful for is the magic of family and the magic of growing up Biden.
I think that serves us well as a final thought.
Thank you.
Our thanks to you, Valerie Biden Owens, for an uplifting series of thoughts tonight. I want to thank everyone who joined us here at USF and online as well for this joint USF Commonwealth Club program. Such a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you. You're a gracious hostess and commentator. You kind of made me look good a few places. I like that. Can I take you back with me? Sebastian, you know?
I'm Gloria Duffy from the Commonwealth Club. This USF Commonwealth Club program is now adjourned. And for those who are here, Valerie Biden Owens will be signing books for those who would like to get a copy of Growing Up Biden. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Really love
My
it.
pleasure.